welcome back to our channel. Today, we dive into the extraordinary life of Catherine of Aragon, Henry VIII's first wife, and a figure whose story resonates with both majesty and misfortune. Known for her devout faith, keen political acumen, and unwavering dignity, Catherine remains one of the most fascinating queens in Tudor history. But behind the grand royal facade lies the real Catherine, a woman whose life was marked by heartbreak, relentless court intrigue, and a valiant fight to secure her legacy. From her early years as a Spanish princess destined for the English throne, to the sorrow of repeated miscarriages and the bitter struggle to save her marriage, Catherine's journey is as tragic as any drama penned by Shakespeare. Join us as we explore the untold details of her trials, her influence, and the enduring imprint she left on history. A charmed childhood and royal lineage. Catherine of Aragon's childhood was nothing short of extraordinary. Born the youngest daughter of Spain's most illustrious power couple, King Ferdinand of Aragon and Queen Isabella of Castile, she was immersed in the fervor and ambition that came with their newly unified kingdom. From a young age, she witnessed the grandeur of her parents' court, a place where politics, faith, and education converged under one mighty crown. Not only did Isabella and Ferdinand complete the Reconquista by capturing Granada, but they also supported historic voyages like Christopher Columbus's expedition, setting Spain on a course toward becoming a global superpower. Surrounded by these triumphs, Catherine, known as Infanta Catalina in her homeland, enjoyed an exceptionally comprehensive education that went far beyond what was typical for a princess of her era. She diligently studied Latin, Spanish, French, and Greek, mastering not just languages but also arithmetic, law, philosophy, history, and classical literature. Under the watchful guidance of her formidable mother, she delved into theology and statecraft too, absorbing the art of negotiation and the subtleties of royal diplomacy, skills that would prove vital in her tumultuous future. Catherine grew up devoutly Catholic, shaped by the strong religious fervor of her parents, who were dubbed the Catholic monarchs, and her upbringing was further enriched by interaction with scholars, theologians, and courtiers from across Europe. She also bore witness to the complexities of Spanish politics, including alliances and dynastic strategies that involved her siblings. One sister, Juana, later known as Juana la Loca, famously went on to rule Castile and became the mother of the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. Living amidst this remarkable blend of courtly splendor and intellectual rigor, young Catherine gained a sense of discipline, sophistication, and resilience. While she was celebrated for her grace and beauty, it was her sharp mind and unwavering sense of duty that truly set her apart. She would draw on these qualities time and again, facing heartbreak, shifting alliances, and fierce political storms once she stepped onto the stage as the future Queen of England. 2. Early engagement, marriage to Prince Arthur. Catherine's journey toward the English crown began long before she ever set eyes on Prince Henry. In fact, her parents, Spain's formidable King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, arranged her betrothal to Henry's older brother, Prince Arthur, when she was just 3 years old. While child engagements were hardly unusual among Europe's ruling families, it was still an audacious move by both courts. England, under the relatively new Tudor dynasty, was eager to cement an alliance with Spain, which had emerged victorious from the Reconquista and was quickly becoming a global powerhouse. Even so, the future bride's arrival would become one of the most talked-about spectacles in Tudor history. By the time Catherine was old enough to wed, the whole realm was abuzz with rumors of her legendary beauty. She reportedly had long auburn hair, bright blue eyes, and a delicate, angelic face, leading some observers to call her the most beautiful creature in the world. At 15, Prince Arthur was considered the rightful heir to England's throne, and Catherine, also in her mid-teens, traveled to London in a style that broke with expectations. Escorted by a lavish retinue, she introduced something entirely new to English soil, a group of African attendants who were the first ever recorded to set foot in London. Although they were dismissed at the time as luxury servants, their presence underscored the vast reach of Spain's international connections and would have certainly piqued the curiosity of onlookers who had never before seen such cultural diversity in the royal entourage. The wedding itself took place on November 14, 1501, likely at the iconic old St. Paul's Cathedral, in a ceremony fit for a future king and queen. Contemporary accounts describe an extravagant display of pageantry, with court musicians, feasting, and processions that highlighted the significance of this alliance. Interestingly, Catherine and Arthur's wedding night became a historical oddity. It was the only public royal wedding of the 16th century in England. Courtiers and witnesses escorted the newlyweds to their bedchamber, then discreetly withdrew, leaving the young couple alone, although not before Prince Arthur reportedly quipped the next morning about having been in the midst of Spain. Whether his bold claim was genuine or pure teenage bravado remains a mystery. In truth, we may never be certain of what really happened behind those closed doors. 3. A sudden tragedy. Arthur's death. Barely halfway through her teenage years, Catherine of Aragon found her life turned upside down by a catastrophe no one had anticipated. She and Prince Arthur, who were beginning their married life in Ludlow, near the Welsh border, were suddenly struck by the terrifying, sweating sickness. This mysterious and deadly ailment swept through the region, laying low nobles and commoners alike, often ending lives in mere hours or days. Catherine herself was so gravely ill that she hovered between life and death, kept under constant watch by royal physicians who struggled to comprehend the rapid progression of the disease. When she finally recovered, she discovered the heartbreaking reality that her young husband had not survived. At just 16 years old, Catherine became a widow, and her entire future descended into uncertainty. With Prince Arthur gone, Catherine's status at the English court was perilously fragile. She was no longer the wife of the heir to the throne, yet her dowry remained a tempting financial prize for her father-in-law, King Henry VII, who was reluctant to let her go, and even more reluctant to return any portion of the Spanish dowry. Meanwhile, her mother, Queen Isabella of Castile, had passed away in 1504, which weakened Catherine's political backing from Spain. She could not simply pack up and return home. Negotiations and dynastic strategies had to be recalculated, especially since England had gained a powerful advantage through her betrothal. Compounding matters, the Tudor court was rife with intrigue and paranoia, new alliances were forming, and Catherine found herself caught in a diplomatic limbo, neither fully welcome as a royal nor free to forge a path elsewhere. 4. Precarious widowhood and the proposal from King Henry VII. Following Arthur's untimely death, Catherine's status at the Tudor court became as fragile as it was complicated. King Henry VII, her father-in-law, was determined not to lose the substantial dowry promised by Spain. Sending her home would have meant returning the funds in full. In a move that shocked nearly everyone at court, the 45-year-old king openly proposed marrying Catherine himself. This idea appalled her parents, Ferdinand and Isabella, who vehemently objected to their teenage daughter taking on a middle-aged husband, especially one who happened to be her late husband's father. Reluctantly, Henry VII withdrew this unsettling plan, setting his sights instead on marrying Catherine to his younger son, Henry, Duke of York, later crowned as Henry VIII. However, even that arrangement didn't proceed smoothly. Not only did Catherine's father, King Ferdinand, delay sending the remaining portion of her dowry, further straining Anglo-Spanish relations, but Catherine was also 5 years older than Prince Henry, sparking whispers at court about whether she would be a suitable partner for the future monarch. By 1505, tension rose to a breaking point when the moment 14-year-old Henry had a legal say in his marriage. He bluntly refused to marry the Spanish princess. Amid these swirling uncertainties, Catherine risked losing her foothold in England altogether. She had few allies left in King Henry VII's circle, and Spain, now struggling with internal disputes and the recent death of Queen Isabella, was not as influential in ensuring her security. In a stroke of political genius, Catherine's father suggested she serve as the official Spanish ambassador to England, making her the first woman in European history to hold such a title. This appointment was far more than symbolic. It gave Catherine a direct channel to negotiate her own future, and it kept her in proximity to Prince Henry at court, allowing her to gradually rekindle the idea of a marriage between them. She proved unexpectedly adept in this diplomatic role, drawing on her extensive education, her natural poise, and her deep understanding of both Spanish and English interests. Over these tense years, she balanced delicate negotiations between two crowns, fended off rumors that her time as a potential bride had passed, and continued to display the resilience and intelligence that would come to define her tenure as queen. Although her journey from precarious widowhood to betrothed princess involved multiple setbacks and required nerves of steel, Catherine never lost sight of the royal destiny she believed was rightfully hers. The marriage to Henry VIII and the quest for an heir at long last, on June 11, 1509, after nearly 7 agonizing years of negotiations, diplomatic standoffs, and family tragedies, Henry took the throne as King of England and made Catherine his queen. He was only 17, brimming with ambition and the athletic vigor for which he would soon become famous, while she was a more mature 23, recognized throughout Europe for both her royal pedigree and her sharp intellect. Their union required a rare papal dispensation from Pope Julius II, given that Catherine had previously been married to Henry's older brother, Arthur. The official reasoning hinged on Catherine's sworn claim that her marriage to Arthur had never been consummated, a detail that, whether true or not, cast a lingering shadow over her new marriage. Nevertheless, the couple seemed determined to forge a golden age for the Tudor dynasty. Their coronation was a glamorous affair, with lavish pageants and feasting that dazzled both the English court and visiting dignitaries. However, amid the fanfare, the pressure to produce a male heir loomed large from the start. Within months of their wedding, Catherine announced she was pregnant. Tragically, that joy was short-lived when she delivered a stillborn daughter. Undeterred, Henry and Catherine were elated at the birth of a healthy baby boy in 1511, christened Henry in honor of his father, yet, heartbreak struck again when the little prince died after barely 52 days. The court was devastated, and Catherine endured mounting anxiety as each subsequent pregnancy ended in stillbirth or infant death. Though she continued to hope for the day she would cradle a living, thriving heir, these repeated losses weighed heavily on the new queen and foreshadowed the personal and political storms that would soon unravel one of history's most dramatic royal marriages. 6. Warrior Queen, Catherine's regency and strength. Catherine of Aragon might have begun her reign as a traditional queen consort, but she quickly proved she had the mettle of a true leader. When Henry VIII left for France to pursue his military ambitions, he named Catherine as regent, a role nearly unheard of for a queen at that time. Almost immediately, Scotland seized on what they assumed was England's weakened state, yet they grossly underestimated Catherine's resolve. Drawing on her upbringing as the daughter of the formidable Queen Isabella of Castile, who had led armies during the Reconquista, Catherine threw herself into the defense of the realm. She coordinated troops, rallied support, and ordered the creation of banners that embodied English pride and power. In a moment that would go down in legend, the heavily pregnant queen rode north in September 1513, clad in armor to inspire her soldiers. During the ensuing conflict, known as the Battle of Flodden, England defeated the Scots, and King James IV of Scotland was killed. Seizing the chance for dramatic effect, Catherine sent Henry the blood-stained cloak of the fallen Scottish king, suggesting he use it as a battle standard in France. Tragically, the stress may have taken a toll. She went into premature labor shortly thereafter, delivering yet another stillborn son, her fourth lost child in just 5 years. The next year brought a similar heartbreak, intensifying both her own desperation for a healthy heir and the pressures at court. Finally, in 1516, she gave birth to a daughter who survived, the future Queen Mary I. Rather than celebrating, Henry's growing impatience for a male heir drove him to seek comfort in a mistress, Bessie Blount, who soon bore him a healthy illegitimate son. For Catherine, these personal losses were as devastating as any battlefield defeat, yet her earlier demonstration of courage and capability as regent would remain one of the most remarkable chapters of her life, proof that she was more than just a royal wife, she was a warrior queen in her own right. 7. Rumors, scandals, and the appearance of Anne Boleyn. By the early 1520s, Catherine's once celebrated marriage to Henry was showing deep cracks, and rumors swirled about the causes of her many miscarriages and stillbirths. Some historians suggest that following Arthur's death, the emotional trauma of widowhood, along with periods of financial hardship and uncertainty, pushed her into what may have been a form of anorexia, an idea inferred from accounts that she was often ill, lost weight rapidly, and dealt with bouts of melancholy. Such chronic frailty, if true, could have severely affected her ability to carry future children to term. Meanwhile, Henry, who had already sparked an international uproar in 1519 by abruptly shaving his beard at Catherine's urging, thereby offending the King of France, found himself increasingly fixated on securing a male heir to solidify his legacy. Catherine's repeated pregnancies and losses had taken their toll, both on her health and on Henry's confidence in her. Europe's power balance was also shifting, with Catherine's nephew Charles V becoming Holy Roman Emperor in 1519, which only intensified political intrigue around the English court. Amid all this tension, Catherine unwittingly introduced her greatest rival. In 1522, she hired a clever and striking young woman named Anne Boleyn as a lady-in-waiting. And, fresh from time spent in the sophisticated French court, quickly turned heads, and Henry's most of all. Unlike Henry's earlier mistresses, Anne refused to become just another dalliance, demanding the commitment of marriage. Younger, unburdened by any scandalous rumors of illness, and potentially able to provide the male heir Catherine could not, and soon became Henry's obsession. The seeds of a monumental royal upheaval were planted, and Catherine, older and exhausted from her unrelenting quest for sons, found herself facing a threat that reached far beyond mere court gossip. 8. The Great Matter. Henry's attempt to annul the marriage by the late 1520s, Henry's frustration over the lack of a surviving male heir had turned into an all-consuming obsession. He convinced himself that marrying his late brother's widow was against divine law, believing their union had doomed them from the start. This fixation fueled what historians call, the Great Matter, Henry's grand scheme to annul his marriage so he could wed Anne Boleyn. Catherine, however, was indignant. She had fought tirelessly for England, riding into battle near the Scottish border while pregnant, and she believed beyond any doubt that she was Henry's rightful queen. She also maintained, even under relentless pressure, that her marriage to Arthur had never been consummated, thus making her marriage to Henry both lawful and legitimate in the eyes of the Church. Henry's path to an annulment was riddled with legal, political, and religious complications. Early on, he discreetly tasked his top advisor, Cardinal Wolsey, with petitioning Pope Clement VII for special permission to declare the marriage invalid. Yet Catherine, well versed in statecraft, was no passive spectator. She appealed directly to the Pope herself, and she also had the unwavering support of her nephew, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. As the most powerful monarch in Europe, Charles effectively hindered Henry's attempts to gain swift papal approval. Sensing the mounting obstacles, Henry tried a more personal approach, urging Catherine to enter a convent and vow celibacy. His hope was that she would quietly remove herself from the equation, an outcome that might spare England a messy international scandal. But Catherine's reply was famously defiant: "God never called me to a nunnery. I am the king's true and legitimate wife." When Catherine refused to yield, Henry resorted to more drastic measures. In July 1531, he rode off on a hunting trip and never returned to her side. Practically overnight, he relocated the royal court, leaving Catherine and their daughter, Princess Mary, behind. Stung by this callous abandonment, Catherine wrote in a letter that Henry had not even woken her to say goodbye. Soon, her worst fears were confirmed. Henry formally banished her, stripping her of her queenly status and installing Anne Boleyn in her former quarters. Catherine would later remark on this heartbreak, saying it was enough to shorten 10 lives. Despite her isolation, she refused to renounce her position or acknowledge Anne as anything more than a pretender. 9. Final years of exile and self-denial. In the years after Henry cast her aside, Catherine drifted from one damp, drafty residence to another on the fringes of the kingdom, living a life that could not have been further removed from the splendor of her coronation day. The quiet corridors of Kimbolton Castle became her final prison, where she confined herself to a single, sparsely furnished chamber, allowing herself only the comfort of attending Mass. What startled even her closest attendants was the extreme austerity of her new daily routine. She drastically reduced her food intake, more through choice than lack of resources, and donned a hair shirt under her garments, its rough fibers incessantly scraping her skin to foster repentance in the most literal, painful sense. This harsh self-denial may have been a manifestation of her deep spiritual convictions, shaped by a devout upbringing under Spain's Catholic monarchs, but it also underscored her profound despair. Unable to negotiate her way back to courtly life or to protect her daughter Mary in person, Catherine channeled her final reserves of strength into small yet defiant acts of motherhood, smuggling letters to Mary in which she reminded her to remain steadfast in faith and virtue. Yet for all the sorrow, Catherine refused to relinquish her claim as Henry's lawful wife. In his desperate bid to secure a male heir, Henry had not only banished Catherine physically but also attempted to erase her legacy by forbidding her to see or even speak with Mary, the one surviving child of their once hopeful union. His letters, laced with threats and bribes, demanded that she publicly acknowledge Anne Boleyn as queen. Catherine answered by calling herself Queen in every letter, brushing aside the lesser title of Dowager Princess of Wales that Henry wanted to impose on her. Her unwavering moral stance aggravated the king, but it also resonated with many of his subjects, who saw in Catherine a dignified figure enduring public humiliation for the sake of principle. Meanwhile, Anne Boleyn's rise at court culminated in a clandestine marriage, sealed barely 5 days after Archbishop Cranmer declared Catherine's own marriage null and void. This final blow left Catherine stripped of her status, her health declining, and her influence confined to the loyalty of a few faithful household members. Even then, she stood her ground, refusing to bend to the new political order that Henry and Anne represented, and in doing so, she crafted a legacy of steadfast devotion that would outlive the immediate drama of her exile. Despite every attempt to silence her, Catherine's example continued to echo through English society, a testament to the conviction that one need not wear a crown to embody the spirit of true queenship. A heartbreaking farewell. By 1535, the once radiant Catherine of Aragon had been worn down by years of heartache, political isolation, and the physical toll of multiple failed pregnancies. Her auburn hair faded, her figure fuller, her spirit weighed by unrelenting sorrow. Confined to the remote Kimbolton castle and deeply conscious of her weakening body, she sensed that her life was drawing to a close. In this bleak solitude, she composed a final, remarkable letter to Henry, one that doubled as a spiritual testament and a deeply personal plea. Despite having every reason to curse him for his betrayal, he had discarded her for Anne Boleyn and forbidden her contact with their only living child. Catherine instead blended rebuke and mercy in equal measure. She reminded Henry of the injustices she had suffered, yet underscored her enduring devotion, writing, "For my part, one pardon you everything, and I wish to devoutly pray God that he will pardon you also." The letter's parting words, however, remain its most poignant. "Lastly, I make this vow, that mine eyes desire you above all things." Even as she pleaded for the well-being of Princess Mary, she chose to sign it with the title she had never renounced, Catherine the Queen. This emotional farewell laid bare her unwavering conviction that, in both God's eyes and her own, she was forever Henry's lawful wife. Though physically she had deteriorated, often relying on the discreet charity of her remaining household and comforting herself with devout prayer, her final words showed a spirit unbroken. Some accounts suggest that even Henry, upon receiving the letter, was briefly moved to remorse, though he never relented in his campaign to erase her from the tapestry of his reign. Nonetheless, Catherine's heartfelt farewell, steeped in both reproach and absolution, revealed a profound inner strength that transcended her grim reality, cementing her legacy as a figure of unwavering faith and dignity in the face of royal abandonment. 11. Catherine's mysterious death and rumors of poisoning. In early January of 1536, as winter's chill settled over Kimbolton Castle, Catherine of Aragon lay gravely ill, battling symptoms so puzzling that even her closest attendants did not know quite what to expect. King Henry had forbidden anyone sympathetic to Catherine's cause from visiting her, yet her loyal friend Maria de Salinas, a woman unafraid of risking the king's wrath, set off on a frantic, 6-mile horseback journey to be by her side. Cleverly deceiving the guards by claiming she had misplaced her permission papers, Maria managed to gain entry just in time to offer comfort during Catherine's final hours. On January 7, 1536, the woman once hailed as Henry's beloved queen slipped away, leaving behind whispers of foul play and heartbreak. While some interpreted Henry and Boleyn's choice of bright yellow attire as a triumphant celebration of Catherine's death, others argued it was actually the Spanish color of mourning, perhaps a token show of respect. Either way, the day of Catherine's funeral brought what many saw as a dark twist of fate, and Boleyn miscarried a child said to be a boy, a devastating blow to her standing at court. When Catherine's embalmer prepared her body, he found everything to be in good condition except for her heart, which had turned black, a morbid discovery that spurred rampant rumors of poisoning, allegedly orchestrated by Henry or Anne. Modern scholars, however, generally dismiss these suspicions, pointing instead to cancer of the heart, a rare ailment that can blacken the organ. Catherine was about 50 at the time of her death and was ultimately interred at Peterborough Abbey, buried with the ceremony of a princess dowager rather than a reigning queen, yet her epitaph would later acknowledge her true rank as Catherine Queen of England. In the end, her final act of defiance was simply leaving this life on her own terms, comforted by a friend's unwavering devotion, and securing a poignant posthumous revenge against those who had once cast her aside. 12. Legacy, Hauntings, and Final Thoughts. Legends say that Catherine's spirit still lingers in places she once called home, most famously at Castle Lodge in Ludlow, where she stayed during her brief marriage to Prince Arthur. Visitors sometimes claim to glimpse a forlorn figure in Tudor finery, wandering corridors, and a nursery that was never graced by the children she hoped to bear. Other rumors place her ghost at Kimbolton Castle, the site of her final confinement, suggesting she cannot fully rest after all she endured. Beyond these spectral tales, Catherine's real legacy lies in her unwavering dignity and resilience. As the first of Henry VIII's 6 queens, she reigned as his consort for nearly 24 years, longer than any who would follow, and her death from natural causes stands in stark contrast to the fates of Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard. She was laid to rest at Peterborough Abbey, now Peterborough Cathedral, in a ceremony befitting a Dowager Princess of Wales rather than a Queen of England, yet many devout admirers still honor her memory, leaving tokens and pomegranates, her personal emblem, on her tomb. Today, historians hail her sharp political mind, her mastery of European diplomacy, and her steadfast commitment to her principles and faith, all of which underscore a life that was far more nuanced than the tragic caricature of a discarded queen. Catherine of Aragon remains a figure of both myth and history, her spirit haunting not only the ancient halls of England's castles but also the collective imagination of those who see in her story a timeless example of courage in the face of adversity. And that brings us to the end of our exploration of Catherine of Aragon's tragic story, a queen who embodied both grace and sorrow amidst the towering ambitions of Henry VIII's court. Her life stands as a powerful testament to the cost of royal alliances, the perils of political maneuvering, and the profound strength of a woman fighting for her beliefs. If you found her journey as compelling as we did, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the remarkable individuals who shaped our past. Tell us in the comments what you think of Catherine's legacy, and as always, thank you for watching.